All right, what is going on, everyone? And welcome back to Mets Weekly as we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X for a very special breaking news report stream, the latest offseason news and rumors. And this is obviously regarding a very highly regarded free agent. Either way, before we get into all of it, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for new episodes of our show, our podcast that is regularly recorded live every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. For those of you watching on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live, which also includes live reactions to off-season moves such as this one that are not available on audio, only on our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for more content over there. And without further ado, let's get into the saga that's become insane this past week. I am joined by Matt from Mets Central. His partner in crime, Evan from Mets Central, will be here later on in the stream. But either way, we're going to hold down the fort. So far, to begin this show, Kyle Tucker, the Mets seem to be in pursuit for the top position player free agent on the market. And the report that we just got actually about an hour ago is that the Mets reportedly have offered him $50 million a year in a short-term deal contract offer. Matt, I mean, I don't know how to feel because this has gotten wild. We'll get into how everything has gone over this past week regarding Kyle Tucker, but boy, would this be quite the get for the Mets lineup if they were to land a coveted free agent such as Kyle Tucker, who you can argue top 10, top 15 player in the league at this current moment going into 2026. This is nuts. This is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm very excited with all the news that came out today. Starting off in the morning today with the whole John Minko thing about the Mets offering him $50 million a year. Whether you want to believe John Minko and whether you believe he has sources or not, whatever, keeping it out there. But of course, we wanted to wait for more of a credible source. And of course, I think the guy that, obviously we have our Jeff Passons, we have our Ken Rosenthal's, the guys that we mostly trust, but the guy that has really had a great offseason so far with breaking tons of news, especially more on the Mets front, is Will Salmon. And we were all saying, wait until Will Salmon speaks, because usually when Will Salmon talks, there's usually stuff that's kind of starting to happen behind the scenes. And around noon today, around 11:30, he ended up dropping his article saying that the Mets are offering him a deal, whether it's 3 to 4 years, anywhere in between, the 40 to like $45 million range. And then, of course, we got the Robert Murray report, which kind of built off the John Minko reports. Whether those reports go hand in hand or whether it was just coincidence that one had the story and the other had the story, he came out and said that he didn't say the years, but we're probably assuming it's a 3-year deal with the AAV reported. But he's saying that the Mets have offered Kyle Tucker an AAV of $50 million a year. And look, whether the Mets land him or not, I do not know. But for me, and I know from my perspective, I'm very excited. And at this point, I know we all kind of want to be skeptical and hesitant because I know in many Mets fans' eyes, this offseason hasn't exactly gone to plan, even though I know both me and you and Evan disagree with the direction that this team is going in. But if the Mets can land Kyle Tucker and, it's going to be on a short-term deal, as we've speculated and stated throughout these last couple live streams. But if the Mets can land Kyle Tucker and place him in the outfield next to Juan Soto, and you now have your 1, 2, 3 in the order of Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Kyle Tucker, well, all of a sudden, and I know Mets fans haven't had the greatest excitement going into next year, if those are the top 3 guys that you were building around in your lineup, it's showing that this Mets team, even though they've tore down a section of their team this offseason, it shows that they still have the want to go and compete next year with teams like the Dodgers, the Phillies, and the Blue Jays. So it's like I said, whether they land them or not, we'll obviously see. There's still more work to be done, but obviously, and Ken Rosenthal also stated, in an article or in an interview he was doing today that possibly Tucker could sign potentially this week or next week. So it seems like we're coming to a head that Kyle Tucker may be signing soon, and obviously kind of helps that maybe Alex Bregman contract signing, maybe that kind of sped up the market a little bit. We'll obviously see and find out, but yeah, exciting times right now.
I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm really, really excited to see how this all unfolds. I'm still even excited to see what they do aside from their pursuit of Kyle Tucker, because my whole impression of how this was going on this last week was maybe the Mets were kind of window shopping in this way. They were doing their due diligence of the top guys on the free agent market because they have the flexibility to do so. And then you started to see, as we got later on in the week, we started to see, well, the Mets' interest in this is real. Like they are up for this. They are in the top three, along with the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, as it has been reported. Then we get the Jim Duquette tweet about how these three teams have met with Kyle Tucker and they've had digital meetings with him over this past week, and they seem to be this top three. We've heard about the Blue Jays willing to go term and the Mets willing to go 3 or 4 years. We don't know exactly the details to this. And not to mention, we've also heard the Dodgers likely just waiting in the wings. We don't know what the Dodgers are going to be willing to do, but it seems like they're on more of that short-term short-term realm as compared to something as the Blue Jays, who it seems like they're willing to go more term compared to AAV. So we'll see where those offers obviously land at. This is a little bit different in comparison to the Juan Soto situation because he was 3 years younger when he was a free agent. Tucker, I believe, will be turning 29 this month. So again, it's a little bit different, and that's the main reason as to why I am all good if they were to go three. I would go a fourth year. I'd be fine going a fourth year with this. I'm all good doing that, mainly because it also lines up with Soto's, opt-out void in his contract. So that would line things up perfectly in that way, even though the Mets more have control over that whole thing. And, they can void the opt-out with a $5 million raise, which is just an insane contract concept, obviously, of giving Juan Soto a raise from the money that he's making as of right now. But either way, if you're looking at a 3 to 4 year frame, I'd say that that's probably the best case scenario of these three in their prime, with Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, and Kyle Tucker. Of those three, if you were to put them together in that lineup, all of their expected primes would line up in that window of 4 years. Now, maybe, I don't know what goes on with Lindor. Lindor is older than both of them, but specifically speaking, those three, catching them at the same time, that certain lightning in a bottle, that would be obviously perfect. Now, like we said, we got a tweet earlier today from John Minconi, who is a former Mets minor league player, and he has put out stuff before. He's very active on Twitter. Whether you have an opinion on him or not, it's whatever. It all really depends on if you are very active on Mets Twitter. Either way, he put out this report or this tweet saying that the Mets were looking in the Kyle Tucker market, and also that their offer was expected to be 50 million AAV, and it looks like he's going to come to a decision in the next day or two. Now, for those of you who do not know who we are talking about in John Minconi, I will just pop it up on the screen here for everybody to see. Whoops, there we go. Perfect. This is John Minconi's tweet saying that the Mets have an offer on the table for Kyle Tucker at 50 million AAV. He is looking to have a decision between the Mets, Blue Jays, and Dodgers within the next day or two. So nobody really knew if this was legit or not. I have no idea, what the entire thought of this is going to end up being. But what we were waiting for, like you said, was Will Salmon. And Will Salmon put out, obviously, his article, which is actually linked in the description of this video. And I will put this on the screen right here. Basically talking about if the Mets were to go into the range of offering 120 to 140 million for 3 years to free agent outfielder Kyle Tucker, as league sources on Tuesday suggested is the case. The question will be, will it be enough? Obviously, we know that it's going to be the Blue Jays with more AAV. The Dodgers are also in that sort of realm. They have a higher payroll than the Mets, so who knows where they go in certain AAV, but it looks like it's going to go with 3 years. It looks like Tucker's preferences and contract length and dollars, both overall and in average annual value, are unknown. We don't know what his preference is, obviously, but he is one of the best players in baseball, so we do expect him to be, looking for a lot. So multiple industry sources, like we said, and also to that Manconi tweet, saying that multiple industry sources said that a decision for Tucker, who turns 29 on Saturday, could come as early as this week. So could it be in a day or two? Could it be in the next 3 days? Who knows what's going to go on there? But when you get this initial sentence here from a guy like Will Salmon, where it was in the range of 140 all the way to as lowest of 120, then we hear 50 million a year. That would be 150 over 3 years, typically, if that is the case. Now, we did not know if Manconi was accurate or not. However, we saw from Robert Murray, like we just said, over this, where is it? Over this past hour, put out an article on fansided.com saying that sources, the Mets have offered $50 million per season on a short-term contract to Kyle Tucker. There's not really much details in here. However, what I did think was funny, obviously, because it's always just seen as, David Stearns does absolutely nothing and Steve Cohen just has the money. The funny part is the headline, or the sub-headline being, the Mets and Steve Cohen aren't playing around. Yeah, hilarious. And it's basically just referring to John Manconi's tweet. And then also somebody said it in the chat, saying that Heyman also confirmed.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was Tony in the chat here saying that Heyman confirmed the $50 million offer. So this would be, according to luxury tax, would be $1 million in luxury tax hit below what Juan Soto is hitting to the luxury tax, which is $51 million a year. You'll also see, obviously, Juan Soto's contract is a little bit different and structured in the 5th year. However, we'll see where it comes from as to, what the direction is. I still am not fully bought in yet. I'm still not, mainly because you're going up against the two teams that were just in the World Series that have quite a selling point. However, the Mets also do have advantages as well. We know that there's a selling point in regards to Lindor and Soto, superstars of this game, obviously. And then you also have the ownership that is willing to do pretty much anything. If they're willing to blow past the tax, they want to obviously win, not to mention the financial flexibility, like we said. But there also is some of connections as well with Kyle Tucker. David Stearns was the Astros assistant GM when Tucker was drafted in 2015. And I know a lot of people will say, well, he was only in Milwaukee. No, he wasn't. Do your research, folks. Mets hitting coach Troy Snitker served as the Tucker's hitting coach from 2019 to 2024. Troy Snicker was just hired by the Mets as their hitting coach behind Jeff Albert. Mets scouting VP Chris Gross was there for Tucker's development in Houston. Not to mention, Jeff Albert, the Mets' other hitting coach, or director of hitting now, coached Tucker in the Astros minor league system from 2015 to 2018. So here's the thing. We have some connections here. I definitely think there is a strong possibility that he ends up being a Met. However, with the Mets coming in at the last hour, with how much we saw from Cody Bellinger, it's probably just because his market is pretty much stalled out because of the 7-year offer that he still wants. So I am interested to see where this goes. I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm a little bit skeptical about the fit. Obviously, when you're talking about run prevention or you're talking about him in left field, because his defense has regressed. And we talked about that actually in the last episode of our podcast when Frank and Andrew were both here. I'm interested. I'm really interested to see how they configure this, because could it be Kyle Tucker in right field? They move Soto to left field, who is not a great defender and probably one of the worst defensive outfielders in all of baseball. Could that be a possibility? I don't know, but I'm not going to get in too much into the details until we hear that Kyle Tucker is a New York Met. Until either way, like we said, Salmon went out and he was vocal. We saw this report from Robert Murray. I'm very interested to see how any of this unravels, because it could be quite the get. And I think that for Mets fans who may be a little bit sour as of right now on the front office, and you have every right to be, like we said, you have every right to be with, fan favorites going. Everyone's allowed to have that emotion. But I think if you add Kyle Tucker into the top 3 of this lineup, and not even just saying replacing the production of Pete Alonso, but just the star power alone, the pedigree alone, I mean, that is quite a top 3. And personally, I think that makes the lineup even better in comparison to last year. But we'll get into that again if Kyle Tucker were to sign here. So, I mean, this is exciting. Really is exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, 100%. And I know you were being a bit more on, not saying skeptical, like you don't think like the Mets have no chance to sign him. You just think like you want to be a little hesitant because we've seen this story before where the Mets get connected to these bigger guys and then they end up landing somewhere. For me though, and listen, I know it might come back to bite us, kick us in the nuts. I said this before we went live. I'm bought in. I think he's going to sign with the Mets. And look, whether I'm proven wrong and he signs either with the Dodgers because he takes more money and he takes maybe lesser money, but he sees a better chance to win a World Series there. Listen, I can fully understand that. If I wasn't a Mets fan, I would probably do the same thing. Or maybe he takes the guaranteed years that the Blue Jays are offering. But there are some important aspects that play in favor to the Mets here. Obviously, like you Carson, you brought up the example of there was plenty of guys from Tucker's time in Houston that are currently with the Mets, like Chris Gross, David Stearns, and Troy Snicker, and I'm sure some of those were even present when the Mets were meeting Kyle Tucker, because it was confirmed that the Mets at least have met with Kyle Tucker multiple times, either some in person or either some in Zoom. I think the last meeting was confirmed that the Mets met with Tucker over Zoom, so I'm sure some of those guys were there in that meeting to kind of talk with Kyle Tucker and try to convince him to come to the Mets. Another one, and I didn't even think of this, but if you guys don't follow Tony Metro over on Twitter and on YouTube, and I know he used to be on here with you guys, Carson, but he brought up a very good point that I didn't even think of, and it's the fact that both the Dodgers and the Blue Jays have already signed a player to the qualifying offer. So they've already given up picks in the upcoming draft, because if you guys remember, the Blue Jays signed Dylan Cease, that 7-year deal, 210. He obviously had the qualifying offer because he was on the Padres last year, and then obviously, this one hurts because Carson, this guy was your favorite player, but Diaz ended up signing with the Dodgers, and of course, he had the qualifying offer. So right then and there, the Mets already had the advantage.
Diaz signed with the Dodgers?
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Damn it!
Yeah, so
Hey, and look at me. I'm moving on. See, I'm not climbing a skyscraper and protesting the team. Look at
yeah,
that.
so
It
so
happens. Guys go. It's a business.
it is what it is. We just got to move
Yeah.
on. But listen, right then and there, and like I said, that's a great point from Tony that I even think about. So
Yeah.
right there, the Mets already have an advantage there because they don't have to go up the qualifying offer. And I think the other advantage that the Mets have in terms of how they're going to structure their contract is because obviously we know that the Blue Jays, if they're going to sign him, they're going to offer more years. Whether it's 7, 8, 9 years, obviously we don't know what the exact number that's going to be. But for me, I look at it and say, okay, if the Blue Jays already have that contract offer on the table to Kyle Tucker, and Tucker wanted the guaranteed years, so why hasn't he necessarily picked them yet? Now, look, maybe he's waiting for the Blue Jays to hit a certain number AAV wise. But look, maybe there's a chance because we've seen with other free agents in the past because before Vladimir Guerrero ended up inking that large contract extension to stay with Toronto, there was plenty of other players that the Blue Jays have offered big time money and big time contracts to, and they simply declined because they just they just didn't want to play in Toronto with the Blue Jays. And then also, if you look at from the Dodgers' point of view, obviously they're going to try the same sort of type of deal with what the Mets are going to do with shorter years but higher AAV. Now, I don't know how much truth that Tony, and I'm not saying that Tony's lying here, but Tony's saying that he's seen from somewhere from the Dodgers' point of view that they've offered 3 for 95. Again, I don't know if that's true per se because I haven't seen anywhere from that, but if that is true, then the Mets already have a significant advantage in terms of AAV wise and contract number wise. Now, listen, that could obviously change because the Dodgers could, they have all the fucking money in the world and they could just sit down like, oh, Kyle, what do you want? Boom, here you go. Contract is done. But the other thing, because what the Dodgers stereotypically like to do is they like to defer a lot of money in the contracts. And if the Mets approach this saying, listen, Kyle, we're going to offer you more money, but we're also going to offer you more money up front compared to what the Dodgers are offering you. So that could, play a larger role in the Mets potentially getting Kyle Tucker to sign here. And the other part is, because I know when you look at free agency classes, I know this year the free agency class specifically on the position players wise, it's been strong. Well, if you look at the upcoming free agency market for position players, it's not relatively strong. It's a lot more stronger, more pitching wise and starting pitching wise. So Kyle Tucker could look at himself and say, okay, I can sign a short-term deal, maybe for 1 or 2 years. Obviously, there is going to be an opt-out, like if the Mets offer him a 3-year deal. He could say, listen, I could have a big year with the Mets. Obviously, I'm surrounded by Soto and Lindor, so I'm going to have a ton of protection in this lineup. I could go have a huge year at Citi Field, playing with the Mets, obviously being reunited with Troy Snitker, and I could potentially have an MVP type year, opt out, and hit the market again, and look for that big time contract that he was originally looking for, probably coming to this offseason. So there is a lot of factors right here that can play into the Mets' favor. It's just obviously it's going to come down to what Kyle Tucker wants personally. Because if Kyle Tucker really wants to win, I know he's already won a World Series, but if he really wants another World Series, obviously I probably see him picking either the Blue Jays or the Dodgers. Probably more so the Dodgers because they are probably the more locked to go back to back to back. But if he's looking from a standpoint of I can really fluctuate my market for next year and have a very good year, I could obviously go play for the Mets and want the more money up front.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I would do if this is the 3-year offer. I mean, I would add I would add another year that's incentive based or whatever. I would do that. It would become available in a 4th year because of this timeline that you're in right now with Juan Soto, where he has that after year 5. He's obviously played 1 year with us already. After year 5, where they can see where they want to go in a certain direction, obviously, and then Lindor's getting older. You have again, that's a little bit more longer down the line. I do another 4-year contract, but again, when it comes to Kyle Tucker, that's a guy that you could have batting 3rd or maybe batting 2nd, Soto at 3rd, whichever way that you want to do it. It definitely coats the lineup fairly well, and you also made a trade and kind of got a short-term, a high AAV deal for Polanco, who is a really good hitter. Like, not many people understand how good of a hitter this guy is. Then you also have Simeon, who, again, could deepen the lineup. And again, I do still believe that there's a little bit left in that bat, obviously. I don't want to see the Mets obviously have this top-heavy team. And I've already talked about top-heavy teams of the Mets not having a deep enough lineup. However, they already brought in two bats who are major league bats. And I know that Simeon is not in everybody's favorite. And they look at his, his stats from last year that weren't necessarily good. However, this is a lineup that is definitely in more position to win on the offensive side than in comparison to last year, in my opinion, where you were banking on a lot having Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. I just think that that is a better lineup. Either way, we'll get into some of your comments in the chat here. Jay-Z saying that if the gap in AV is that significant, he's coming to the Mets. It's likely. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. I'm interested. I really am interested because I don't know what his cause is on term or AAV because again, Kyle Tucker's not a Boris client. So this is a little bit different in negotiating tactics. So you don't have Scott Boras saying he's, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something. Like you don't have that market right now. Milo's saying, "What's up, fellas? I hope they pull this one off. For some reason, offseason kind of feels like it's either Tucker or bust right now. I don't see Bellinger happening, but we shall wait and see." And I do think that they are going to be in that outfield market in some way. I do think that they're going to be in that outfield market in some way. I do think that they will make a trade for somebody if this ends up not going the Mets' favor. However, the Mets do have a lot of advantages here, but I'm not going to sit here and say that the Blue Jays and the Dodgers don't either. So I feel like they do have some stiff competition to fight off. So I'm not going to completely victory lap it just yet, but I do think that the Mets do have a chance to pull this off. And, when you trade a guy like Brandon Nimmo, like we have said, why would you give 7 years to a guy like Cody Bellinger? You trade Brandon Nimmo to offload that money, offload it long-term to bring in another short-term piece. And I think we all can agree that Tucker is a better player than Brandon Nimmo. So there's definitely some upgrade there. As much as I loved Nimmo for his time here, homegrown guy, nice guy, fan favorite, Kyle Tucker is a better player than him. Just like I believe Kyle Tucker is a better player than Pete Alonso. Oops! I said it!
How could you say that?
Oops! How could I? White Bears attack everywhere. Brian in the chat saying Lindor, Soto, Tucker would be one of the best, one of the three best 1 through 3 in the lineup in the entire league. I don't think there's any way you can debate that. Let's just say that. But we'll see. Pair with a night, yes. Whatever the. Oh my god.
But yeah, I think the other important factor that people are looking at, because obviously there is the question, like you brought up, okay, if the Mets do sign Kyle Tucker, how are they exactly going to align the outfield? And I know because obviously we already have Juan Soto aligning in right field, but for me, I think that you would play Kyle Tucker in right field since he's naturally the better defensive player, and then you allow Soto to move over to left field. And I know people have kind of been speculating, will Juan Soto exactly want to do that? But from everything we've seen and from all the reports, Juan Soto, he looks and sounds like the guy that's just, he's going to do whatever the team wants him to do. He's going to do whatever it takes to win. Because obviously for the upcoming World Baseball Classic for the Dominican Republic, he's going to play left field. When he was with the Nationals in 2019 when they won the World Series, he was playing left field. So if the Mets come to him and David Stern and Steve Cohen come to him, it's like, listen, Juan, we're going to give you extra protection in this lineup by giving you Kyle Tucker. Would you move over to left field for us to allow Tucker to play right field since he's the better defender, since he's the better defensive player? I'm sure he would look at it and say, yeah, 100%, I'll move over to left field to allow Kyle Tucker to come in because he's that type of player to do that. And I mean, there were even reports also throughout the offseason that because obviously Soto has looked at, if you look at Soto's season last year, obviously the one big thing that he really improved upon was his base running. Well, there were some interviews that he was doing in Spanish or when he was in Dominican Republic, and he said the one thing that he really wants to work on this year is his defensive play in the outfield. So, and listen, I'm not saying that Juan Soto is going to become a Gold Glove player out there in left field, but if he's willing to improve his defensive play, like how we saw he improved his base running, then the Mets are going to become a better team all around and more of a better team defensively. And obviously, that maybe might even go in hand with the fact that the Mets brought in a guy like Kai Correa, who is known for being very astute defensive mindedness in terms of positioning and how you hit certain cutoff man. So obviously there is a route to go if the Mets do sign Kyle Tucker. The other positive to where if the Mets do sign Kyle Tucker, because if you guys recall, there was rumors that Carson Bench, depending on, of course, how his spring training goes, he might have a very good chance at cracking the opening day roster for opening day.
Yes.
But if you have Kyle Tucker, now you can be a little bit more safer with Carson Bench. You can allow him to start the season in AAA, marinate a bit, and then when he's fully ready, you can bring him in center field. Because if you go into center, or if you go into opening day and you have an outfield of Kyle Tucker, Juan Soto, and Tyrone Taylor in center field, I think we all feel pretty confident that that's a very capable, starting caliber major league outfield. So obviously, if that's the case, and you now allow Carson Bench to start the season in AAA, I think that only enhances why the Mets should go out and splash the money and sign a guy like Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's definitely a fit because obviously they have two outfielders right now, and you see after that depth chart behind Soto and Taylor, you have Benj, who has not yet made his debut. They have talked about Jet Williams in the outfield, which I don't want to see. But we'll see how all this unfolds as we have the other part of Mets Central getting ready to join us. Let me switch this over here, and then there's the right names. Perfect. Well, Evan, welcome. The trio's back. Either way, I mean, this is crazy. 50 million AV. How do they do this with such a terrible executive such as David Stearns? How?
Not only that, how could they do that with an owner that cares about the casino and nothing else? I mean, this guy Cohen, he doesn't care about anything else. But yeah, in all seriousness, I'm excited to see how this goes because in my mind, I mean, it goes one of two ways. It's either, the Mets get Kyle Tucker and we're all fat and happy, and if not, there's going to be some sort of plan B that we do not know about up their sleeves to where maybe they pivot to get like Gino and put him into the lineup, and then they add maybe another bat there instead of supplementing just the 50 million to Tucker. Or maybe Cohen says fuck it and goes out there and gets Tucker, and they still get a guy like Gino to add to the lineup since they are in this department where they're spending short-term high AAV on certain guys. So it's exciting to see that, they really have a chance to lighten the lineup. But in my mind, you add to this lineup Kyle Tucker, and then you add one more pitcher to this rotation here, a quality pitcher that is. This team's better than they were last year, and that's what's exciting about it. And I know the Polar Bear fan club is going to kill me for saying that. Put your pitchforks down and just wait and see what happens going into the season.
Hey, I don't know what is going to end up happening here, but they're at 301 as of right now. Okay, they're 301 on the payroll at this current moment before the tax. And we did get that report about a tentative budget about them being in the 40 to 50 range. If you add in probably 351 in the total payroll for next year with a Kyle Tucker. There also was a report within that report from John Heyman, and I will pop it up, that they will be willing to blow completely past it if that so comes up, if that opportunity does end up coming up. The thing is that if you have, Andrew, I hate you. If you have these certain details of possibly Kyle Tucker, you're in the win now mode. You're not just sitting here, well, we want to give the kids the opportunity. You're in that win now mode. And there is obviously this part where John Heyman says that if there is an opportunity, Cohen would allow Stearns to blow through it. So, again, I don't know where, I don't know where that line stops. And obviously, if you add Kyle Tucker, there probably is going to be some motivation for them to go a little bit more forward. Like, I just don't see them adding Kyle Tucker and that's it. Like that's it. There's nothing to be of note. They're going to go full on in whether it is Tucker or not. And Tucker is obviously going to be the next move that possibly happens, but we still don't know what's going to happen with the pitching staff. We don't know if they're going to make a trade there. We don't know if they make a trade for a outfielder. Like, we don't know if that's what they try for, like a defensive outfielder. We haven't seen anything yet. First base, who knows? And even with Tucker or Soto, or you could DH one of them at one point, and you could possibly open a possibility for one of the young guys to come up. We'll see. I am interested. Ibby's in the chat saying that he's very confident. He's been a Tucker fan for a while.
King Tuck, baby.
Welcome, Ibby. King Tuck. King Tuck. That's what he coined, I'm pretty sure.
I think the other important thing that, again, like, Mets fans have to look at this in perspective, because I know people don't love David Stearns right now because he got rid of the almighty polar bear. He got rid of the child of God in Brandon Nimmo. But what the Mets are doing right now is, and especially if this point gets more asserted, if they land Kyle Tucker, but the Mets right now are building a lineup and are building a team of winners. You bring in Kyle Tucker, won a World Series in 2022 with the Astros. You brought in Juan Soto last year, World Series champion 2019. Obviously Lindor hasn't won a World Series, but he went to the World Series Game 7 with the Indians in 2016. You bring in Marcus Semien, who's been known as a captain and a great clubhouse leader in his time with the Rangers, and obviously won a World Series in 2023. And like I said, if you bring in Tucker, again, World Series champion in 2022. So slowly it looks like that they're starting to assemble and mold a core that could change the culture, but also these guys are proven winners, and they've shown when it comes to the big times, when it comes to the huge spotlights, these are the guys that when they have to come and perform, they perform. Unlike some of our other guys, some of our other core guys, that when the lights have shown or when the lights have been the brightest, they tend to kind of fold under pressure. So obviously, listen, we'll see what happens.
All proven winners, just like
Pete Alonso.
Right. Anyways, listen, I am very interested. I am extremely interested because obviously we didn't know what route they were going to end up going. And I obviously go from a more realistic point of, what can this guy give us? What exactly can he give us? And do I understand what the move is? I've never been someone to sway one way where I'm like, okay, if they end up doing this, I am done. I am finished. Like, I cannot stand it. There's a few moves where I'm like, okay, top 1% moves where I'm like, okay, please do not do this. However, I will always give it a chance. And we always know that when it comes to the outfield market, that there are a lot of guys on the trade market that the Mets have been attached to, and they're really casting a wide net in that way. Same thing goes for the pitching, but as for the outfield conversation, there's been talks about Austin Hayes. That's come out recently. There's been talks about Luis Robert. There's been talks about Jake Myers, Brenton Doyle, Lars Nootbaar came up. Speaking of Cardinals, with Nolan Arenado getting traded to Arizona, looks like they are going fully into a retool or culture changing moves. I don't know. But again, I really I really was intrigued from the very, very beginning when they let this 2019 core go, that it opens up the possibilities to maybe fill in avenues that the Mets really didn't pay attention to that much in the past. That being, overall run prevention, overall base running, guys with two strike approaches, guys who do well with runners in scoring position, professional hitters, jack of all trade types of players, which the Mets did not draft or develop. And when you speak of Kyle Tucker, a guy like Kyle Tucker, this is a jack of all trades type of player. Even if you want to go from a certain standpoint of just simply baseball savant. I mean, if you want to just go straight off of that. Kyle Tucker, great quality of contact, barrels up the ball fairly well, doesn't chase, makes a lot of contact. This is a professional hitter right here from all certain points. And I do think that this protects Juan Soto a lot better than Pete Alonso would. I hate to say it. I know we have to be all loyal to our homegrown guy. However, I think that this protects Juan Soto a lot better. Why would he? Well, because you know exactly what to expect with Pete Alonso. You know exactly that sometimes he'll get tied up if he's going late. He'll get tied up with a high fastball. He'll chase things in the other batter's box. He has swing and miss tendencies. However, with Kyle Tucker, he has a lot of different advantages with his hitting profile. And he's mastered it over these last few years. He really has. A lot less deficiencies offensively. With him defensively, I will say that I am okay with either you put Soto in left, Tucker in right, or Tucker in right, or Soto in left. Because each of them have had a point of emphasis where maybe they've fallen off a little bit. For me, I would again preface this that considering, I would say I trust Tucker's arm a little bit more, that I would probably prefer to have him in right field.
Yeah, no, I fairly agree with that. Plus, Soto does have a fairly decent arm himself. So, if you play him in left field, and especially if he can improve upon his defense, like he said that, he really wants to do this offseason, then, like I said before, okay, you're not going to get a Gold Glove left fielder out there in left field to Juan Soto, but you might get a more defensively responsible version of Juan Soto and a more reliable defensive version of Juan Soto compared to what we saw last year with him in right field. Where, listen to me, and I know the analytics don't like Soto defensively. Did I think he was terrible out in right field? No, but you can certainly improve upon him defensively. But obviously, you can deal with Juan Soto's defensive deficiencies because his bat and his eye at the plate is that good. I think the other thing with Kyle Tucker, though, and especially when we look at kind of fits and the type of hitters that the Mets have kind of struggled with these last couple of years, because obviously one of the big things we talk about is the Mets are one of, at least, under Eric Chavez, they were one of the worst fastball hitting teams in Major League Baseball. Yes. You look at Kyle Tucker's breakdown, 270 batting average, 479 slugging. So again, he had a good year last year hitting fastballs, and then the year before in 2024, his last season with the Astros, 299 batting average, and then a slugging of 635. And obviously, he's been a good breaking ball, a good off-speed hitter. Kyle Tucker is a very good hitter all around. But the other thing the Mets have really struggled with is the fact that they've struggled severely with hitting left-handed pitchers. And if you look at the breakdowns with Kyle Tucker, last year hitting lefties, 269 batting average, 365 OBP, 461 slugging, and 826 OPS with a 134 WRC plus. And it's fairly similar to what he does against right-handed pitchers as well, because that slash line is 264, 383, 465, 849 OPS, and then a 137 WRC plus. So with these additions, and then we saw with the Mets bringing in Jorge Polanco. He's very good at hitting left-handed pitchers. At least last year, he was much more better at hitting left-handed pitchers. Marcus Semien, he's good at hitting left-handed pitchers. So right now, you're seeing, and especially if the Mets do land Tucker, they are balancing out more of their lineup, and they're making it much more of a versatile lineup to where, okay, if the Mets come up against this type of pitcher, they're not going to struggle because they're versatile and they could adapt to certain situations. Where in the past you would see, like, if the Mets would come up against like a soft tossing lefty or pretty much any type of lefty pitcher, we were pretty much screwed, and only hoping that our pitcher on the other side would pitch a gem, because we weren't scoring a lot of runs unless we got to the bullpen and we saw more of a more right-handed options coming out of the bullpen. So listen, I agree with you, Carson, to where it's like the Mets are building much more of a versatile lineup, especially if they do get Kyle Tucker.
It's more about just enhancing the dimensions of the team. And listen, he's a career 842 OPS bat against lefties. He is a career 877 OPS bat against righties. But the main reason as to why I think it's so important that he's so good against lefties, you obviously have a lot of high-profile lefties in this NL East division, and when you talk about getting the best quality of contact on these types of pitches, like we said, from the left side, I mean, again, I'm going to continue to say it. I'm going to point it out of the profile that the Mets are looking at. Pull, fly, balls. That's exactly what Kyle Tucker does. And not to mention all of his great contact rates and everything that he does well. He really didn't need the Crawford boxes in Houston to succeed whatsoever. Because from the left side, he generates a lot of power. He really does. And again, Citi Field is not the best of hitting parks. We know it is not. One of the main reasons as to why you see so many low-scoring games. However, last year, would have had more. 26 home runs in Citi Field. He would have had 31 home runs in 2023. So, again, Citi Field definitely lines up that swing for Kyle Tucker. So, I think that this is a really, really good fit, obviously. And like we said, also with pitch selection as well. I mean, like we said, a great fastball hitting team, a great fastball hitting player, not to mention well above average on secondaries as well. So this is a very, very smart hitter that you are going to be getting, and pairing that up with Juan Soto, who is, I mean, a generational type hitter from all aspects. I think that protects him a little bit better. And the only reason as to why I say that, again, it's not just the fact that you have the top three in this lineup. Because, again, you could load the bases against these three. You could just walk all three of them and, don't let them beat them. And you go to the cleanup hitter, who we still don't know who is going to be batting cleanup for this team, but we'll see. You could. However, if you walk these guys, let's just be real for a second. Kyle Tucker is also a 25 to 30 stolen base threat guy as well. We talked about Soto as well. He almost went for 40-40. We'll see what that happens to do so in 2026. And then also you have Francisco Lindor, who is a 30-30 guy as well. So again, when you're talking about, 30 stolen base guys from the top of your lineup, that is improving the dimensions. Let me ask chat this, guys. Let me know in the chat. Could you get that from Pete Alonso? No. Could you get that from maybe the next guy on the list, Mark Vientos? Maybe batting cleanup? No. Brandon Nimmo? No. Is Jeff McNeil? No. Nope. And guess who also has plus speed? This guy. He also has plus speed. Do you see what we're putting together here? You see what we're putting together here? Enhancing the dimensions of the team. Sprint speed, 81 percentile in sprint speed for Marcus Semien. Do we understand? Do we see the dimensions of this team right now?
No,
Do we get it now?
And that's also like one of the bigger things, because I know comparably when you look at how the Brewers have built their teams, and especially when you look at how Stearns built their teams, when he was there from his time in 2015 to when he left in 2023. But one of the biggest reasons why the Brewers are such an annoying team to play against is because whenever they do put the ball in play and whenever they do put the ball into the outfield, one of the reasons why they're able to score a lot more extra runs and they're able to cause the defense a lot more trouble is because of that extra speed on the base pass. And how many times, especially in the 3-game set that we played them last year in the wild card, how many times did a guy like Bryce Terang just put a simple ball into the outfield and he was able to stretch that for a double at second base? And again, that allows you more base running opportunities, but it also allows you more opportunities to score more runs, because now if you get to second base, all you need is a double in the gap, or if you have already a speedy guy on second base, a simple freaking ground ball to the outfield might get a run across. So like you said, Carson, just slowly but surely, and especially if they can get Tucker, and you're adding more of these guys that are more versatile and they have more aspects of their game, you are now the Mets will basically they will be a more fundamentally sound team. And that's something that this team and that core that we've just ripped apart, that was one of their main problems, was they just weren't a strong fundamental team. They lacked a lot of the basics that you see teams like the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, the Phillies, the Braves, the Tampa Bay Rays when they were good a couple years ago. Those teams that made it far and had deep runs and won the World Series, the reason why they were able to do it is because they were sound fundamentally. And the fundamentally sound baseball teams, those are the teams that typically win games and win championships.
I mean, it's more of, how we've talked about it, of the star power, the intangibles, the margins being filled. And we've seen a lot of these guys be brought in by David Stearns that maybe aren't the best players, but they fill in the margins. Tyrone Taylor has been brought, Tyrone Taylor comes to mind with that. Guys like Luis Torrens, I mean, what a difference maker he made when the Mets were getting ran all over in 2024. He has one of the best arms in all of baseball. So guys like that who can fill the margins. And I know that a lot of people will kind of backtrack here. What have the Brewers done? How have the Brewers done? They don't win. We don't want to be the Brewers. We want to be the Mets. We want to be a big market team. Okay, well, if you have these little elements of these guys that fill in the margins, you're not going to be the Brewers. You're going to have a little bit more Brewers type intangibles, but you're not going to be the Brewers. And I'll tell you why. Do the Brewers have players like Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, and possibly Kyle Tucker? No, they do not. So it's like you have to have a little bit of everything to build a team that can win. And it's not just, everybody that has all of these good hitting stats, we're going to all put them together. There's other aspects to this game that had a lot of shortcomings on this team. Strictly defense. You weren't getting defense from Pete Alonso. You weren't getting defense from Brandon Nimmo. You weren't getting the best defense or top 1% defense from a guy like Jeff McNeil. Those are deficient parts to this team as to why they always come up short. And because they're homegrown pieces, we'll continue to hear people overcompensate for these players that are just not good enough. And they proved it for 7 years. So let's get players that actually are good enough. And guys who don't even need to hit to contribute. They don't need to be white hot in the lineup. They don't need to have an OPS over 1,300 in a month to be wild contributors. Because naturally, as a player, they can contribute. And that's the type of things that you can see from Lindor, even a guy like Soto, if he continues to steal bases, and a guy like Tucker. That's what you need. You have star power of jack of all trades, and then you also have other guys who can fill in the margins as well.
Yeah, I mean, even like I mean, like even like you look at the team that just won back-to-back World Series, right, in the LA Dodgers, and yes, do they have the top three firepower of guys like Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, and even Teoscar Hernandez to a certain point as they're, or he could DH, but he can also play. He could also play the outfield as well because usually Ohtani DHs more. But other than that, and of course, they have Will Smith behind the plate, who's more of a proven player. But look at their roster besides those, 4 or 5 guys. The rest of their guys, like, they're not household names. They're solid guys, but those are not guys that, you kind of look at and like, oh, like, you're scared like an Ohtani, Betts, Freeman. But the reason why you are scared to go up against a team like the Dodgers is because those depth players that they have, they are a lot more versatile. They can play defense. They have speed. They can steal bases. They can, they're good contact hitters. They're good power hitters. They have, they're, like I said, they're very sound in terms of just their philosophy and how they team build. And that's something that we've been saying about this Mets team. It's like, listen, you can't just put together a random mesh of players and expect it to work. Like, there is a way to build this roster correctly, and you need a little bit of everything. It's like we always say, and like I compare it with hockey, right? It's like you can't just win based off your superstars alone. Listen, to win a World Series, yes, you obviously need superstar players. I'm not going to deny that, because when you look at every World Series team, they have superstars. But what really takes a team over the top is their depth and their philosophy and how they play, and they play underneath the hood with their defense, their base running, and all these little things that maybe don't show up on the score sheet, but when you actually look at how the games are played and you break them down like inning by inning and pitch by pitch, all those little factors, they play together and they mesh together to why a team is that dangerous and that good, like the Dodgers have been the last 2 years, when they've won back-to-back World Series.
And, it's more of just based off of, not just that alone. It's you obviously do need star power, and the Mets do have that star power in, any way. In any way, like we said, in, the elite hitting, or, it's all really just about putting together the tools to succeed. And like we said, this team was not coached well. We talked about the coaches plenty of times, but we also have talked about a lot of, who is the right, winning type of player, like, who is this a winning type player? Is this somebody who in almost any situation can help you? It's not just because of the stars, it's because of what can this guy type of provide. And that's one of the main reasons as to why we know that the Mets are so high on a guy like Carson Bench, because there's nothing that he does so elite in any way. However, he can do a lot of different things for you. And as he develops, he can develop in all certain dimensions. And when we saw guys of how the Mets kind of drafted and developed these pieces, those old ways caught up to them. They really caught up to them. And it showed how limited this team was. When you draft guys like, Mark Vientos, who is slow as all dirt, you bring in guys like, you draft pieces that, guys like, Pete Alonso, he's great. He is great. He's a fantastic hitter. But for him to give us that contribution, we're going to need him to do what he was doing in the first 2 months of 2025, which was an 1,100 OPS, which we know he's not capable of sustaining. So, again, guys who don't need to hit to be contributors to the team are extremely important in addition to that star power. It's not just about filling in the roster with superstars. And Tucker, I'd say that he's on the cusp of being a superstar. Like, I know that he probably could give you a 900 OPS season. Like, I know he could. However, I think he's just more of a great all-around player to help shape this team. And that's the main reason as to why I think the team's just going to be a lot deeper if they end up bringing in Kyle Tucker. They end up signing Kyle Tucker. We'll see what happens. It is very, it's still up in the air. We still don't know if Kyle Tucker will be a Met. However, when you offer $50 million a year you know that the Mets are serious about this player. They are serious. I would love for them to add an extra year onto this just to seal the deal. Why not? What is stopping you? Because again, if you're gonna go full in, go full in. There's only two ways that I like to go. There's only two ways that we'd prefer to go. Don't half-ass it. Don't waste everyone's time. Don't be the Rangers. Don't do that. If you're gonna go all in, go all in. And I think that that's basically what their mindset is when you hear reports about, well, if we're going to blow past this threshold, let's blow past it completely. Not to mention, here's another factor that we didn't even mention. The CBA might be completely different.
Yeah.
Go all the way past it. Blow all the way past if that's what you want to do. But you obviously have to do it smart. You have to do it in a smart way. Mets have been disciplined so far this offseason. They've been very, very particular. And Kyle Tucker's market kind of cooling off over this last month after the winter meetings has kind of put them in a position where they can offer this to Kyle Tucker. But this is how you win here. You have to spend not only correctly, but wisely. Not on guys like, Starling Marte. Not on, guys like Brandon Nimmo, who are good players, but are they deserving of that certain value? No, and that was the main reason as to why this team was tied down to, well, we can't do this. We can't do this. We can't have this type of flexibility in this way. Well, now it's time to open that up a little bit. Open up the dimensions of this team. You don't have to tie yourself down to anybody. Figure out how you're going to build a full-on roster so we don't have guys who are coming from the Long Island Ducks on our bench or in our starting lineup. Just build a deep team. That's what we want because that's what the Dodgers are. They're not just superstars. And I think a lot of people ignore that. I really do think that they ignore it because of Shohei Ohtani, because of Mookie Betts, because of Freddie Freeman, which again, they're great players. However, they also have other guys on that team who help them win baseball games.
Yeah, 100%. And listen, I think when all is said and done, because Kyle Tucker's birthday is actually this upcoming Saturday, so maybe we get a resolution by the end of the week. Obviously, we'll see what happens. But I am interested to see what this final contract is going to offer, or what it's going to look like when Tucker ultimately accepts where he's going to sign with. I know you said you are willing to go for a fourth year and add on another year to that. I'd even say I'd be willing to even offer 5 years and even maybe structure the opt-outs a little bit differently. Because I know for me, over the last couple of days, thinking about this deal more, I would have said that I at least wanted 2 years minimum of Tucker here. So obviously you would offer an opt-out after the second year, but Tucker might be looking at his case like what we brought up earlier with the fact that next year's offseason is very lackluster in terms of the position players. Maybe he looks and says, okay, because that's the fact of, I'm going to be the big guy next year in the offseason. I only want I only want the opt-out after year one. And at first I was a little I would have rather him be here for 2 years minimum, but I have kind of softened up to the fact that he might only be here for 1 year because of the fact also, like you said, Carson, there might be or at least it's looking like there is going to be a lockout next year. So, and we don't know if we're going to have baseball next year. So at this point, I'm looking at more okay, just give me the one guaranteed year. Let's see if we can win a World Series, because obviously, like I said, we don't know if there's going to be baseball next year. And listen, maybe Kyle Tucker likes it here. He opts out, and the Mets end up signing him to another contract. Who knows what could happen? But obviously, we need to get this deal done first. But like I said, for me, I would even go 5 years, maybe off from 5 for 225, something like that. But obviously, it looks like the Mets are steadfast right now at 3 for 150. Maybe let's see if they do feel that they have to add another year to make it to 4. Maybe they do. Obviously, right now negotiations are fluid, and obviously, I don't know when the final offers are going to go in. We'll obviously see when that happens. But yeah, I'm interested to see what this final contract ends up looking like when Tucker inevitably picks or he's going to sign.
Yeah, and that's the main reason as to why I am a little bit more confident in this way. Like we said, Marcus saying that even if the Mets get Tucker, they still need a right-handed power bat. I mean, that is true. It is definitely true that they probably need to add something else to this lineup. But I also have this thought of, you have a lot of professional hitters in this lineup and a lot of profiles that the Mets like. I mean, if you were to add Kyle Tucker to this, I still think that the lineup is deeper as compared to what you were getting from last year. You weren't just relying on the kids after the top three in the lineup. You have Marcus Semien, who, again, I will emphasize, I do believe there still is something left in that bat. And you also have Jorge Polanco. So, again, maybe Francisco Alvarez. Like, you got to see one of the young guys obviously do something, but we'll see how they approach this. I do also want to see them add somebody to the bench too, because as it currently states right now, even though Tyrone Taylor will likely go to the bench, Jared Young is is right now on your opening day bench. So again, we'll see. We'll see where it takes us. Could that right-handed power bat just be, Vientos with better hitting coaches? I don't know. No clue. But I'm not willing to sit here and try and figure out exactly what else they need to this lineup before this obviously goes through. It seems like this came up really fast, or the Mets were just monitoring it the entire offseason and just waiting to pounce. But I am very, very interested to see where they go, because they have already added 2 bats that I feel like makes this lineup deeper. They have experience, and they still have a little bit left in the tank. And I know that Semien is the worst hitter in all of baseball now to everybody. But it's all more about the process that is being held in. And the process that's being held in, to me, in my eyes, how I'm looking at it, of the certain profile they have and the certain plan that they have, again, like I said, pulling fly balls. And that's something that Semien has always been reckoned to do, even with low percentile bat speed, which, again, his bat speed is not the fastest. Again, like in certain cases of talking about just Marcus Semien, his bat speed isn't fast. However, it never really was. And that's the main reason as to why he was able to generate so much power, and he was able to hit, 40 home runs or whatever, is with pulling fly balls. And if you have that certain profile of a hitter, it can turn good hitters into great hitters. It can turn great hitters into elite hitters. And I'm not saying just pull everything, like we've said, not pull everything, but a pullable pitch, fastball right down the middle, pull it. Pull that thing. We saw so many times with this team, right down the middle, slapping it to the opposite field. No more of that. No more. Let's do what modern day hitters do.
Whatever happens, happens.
Whatever happens, happens. Exactly.
No, but
I'm just confident in this process, and I'm confident in the weapons that they have in this lineup because of the shakeup that they made, obviously. It's more of just things going hand in hand as of right now, where you have the tools and you have the coaches as well to send that certain message. And if it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well. We'll go on from there. However, I'm confident that this offense is going to be better, and I'm also confident that they will figure out what they're going to do with the starting pitching, because we still don't know what they're going to do with that. And we still have, we're counting down the days to pitchers and catchers reporting. So we'll see what they have up their sleeve here. But Kyle Tucker, this is exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, similarly like what we were talking about earlier, I think, because like going into this offseason, I don't think anyone on the Mets in the front office envisioned them ever being in the market for Kyle Tucker. I think they always looked at it as, listen, we're going to be on the outside looking in. We're going to stay patient. We're going to stick to our philosophy of team building. But if this falls into our lap, we're going to be ultra aggressive on this. And that's the one thing that I like, because I know me, you, Evan, we've always talked about it. Like, if you're going to establish a plan, if you're going to establish a philosophy, make sure you stick to that philosophy 100% fully. Don't ever deviate just because something shiny is approaching you. No, only go for it unless it really falls into your lap. And right now, they waited out the market. Obviously, I think everyone here predicted that at least Kyle Tucker was going to get some type of long-term deal. I don't think I've ever envisioned him getting like a 12, 11-year deal, similar to like what Juan Soto got with 15 years. But I thought he was at minimum going to get 9, 10, 8 years. Doesn't look like it's going to happen right now. And the Mets, David Stearns, had looked at it. It's like, listen, we're not going to half-ass this. We think we can get him, and we're going to be aggressive. And I mean, right now, if with the looks of it that they're offering 3 years for 50 million AAV, they're going all for it. And I just hope.
And you
I really
know
hope
that there's going to be a mentality. There is going to be a mentality from Mets fans that if they don't end up getting Tucker, it's just going to be like, oh well, throw whatever you want at Bellinger. That's probably not where they're going to go. That probably isn't going to. And it may sound as frustrating, but if they didn't end up getting Soto, I didn't think that they were going to go as far into the next best thing. It's about if this player is in the top 1%, if they are worth being overpaid to get them, go ahead and get them. But if you don't end up getting them, you don't just completely panic move to the next guy, because that's how you end up with Starling Marte contracts and Brandon Nimmo contracts and all of these guys who you have locked down for so long that they deteriorate. And with Kyle Tucker, you have him signed for 3 years. That's his prime. That is his prime. And, he is one of the best hitters in all of baseball, one of the best players in all of baseball. So that is definitely a good third option in that lineup. He'd be the third. That's crazy, isn't it? Third. And to be honest, if you're looking at from the team building standpoint, you have Soto and Tucker both in the 50 million range yearly. That probably makes us think, hey, maybe Francisco Lindor is underpaid. Isn't that crazy to think about it? And I know he's completely overpaid and he's the devil and he destroyed our clubhouse. But again, it's one of those things that, again, if they have a certain philosophy and they stick to it, then you're going to have some consistency in that way. And I will even give you a strong example of somebody that nobody even wants, but it makes sense. And listen, I don't want him. I don't want him at all. But it makes sense why they are doing it, because it fits into a window of the mindset of what they're looking at. Here we go. Austin Hayes, a guy that the Mets have been linked to. Nobody wants him. I don't want him. I don't prefer him at all. However, what do we see about Austin Hayes? Interesting. That's interesting. He pulls fly balls.
And he's a fastball. And he's a fastball. Yeah, exactly.
And he's a fastball hitter too. Do we see this is connecting here, right? We have a certain hitter profile, a certain dimension player. Again, Austin Hayes, I know, was banged up last year, but he did well. Did well offensively, 768 OPS, but he also has a strong arm. He also can, give you a decent amount of power. And then I also know that his arm has been better than this before. Yes, his arm was better than this, but I think he had surgery on something. But again, I don't want Austin Hayes. However, if they were to sign a guy like Austin Hayes, right, I would understand it. I wouldn't be thrilled about it, but I understand it because it fits a certain profile. And maybe the Mets see something there. Who knows? Because I always talk about it on our show, and people give me shit for it. I say, okay, I understand. I understand why they're going this way. I don't agree. And when I say I understand, it's not that I 100% agree with it, but I'm someone who likes to do my research in this way, right? I like to do that research of a certain player. Another guy, Luis Robert Jr. defensive specialist. He's fast. He can steal bases. What do you know? He pulls fly balls. We starting to see this? We're starting to see you see how this is lining up here? Like there's a certain profile that they want to maximize, whether it is a highly regarded player or it's a lowly regarded player that they need a bounce back from. I can do another guy that's out there that the Mets have been attached to. Brenton Doyle. Great defensive player. Above average in pulling fly balls. But again, played in Colorado. Again, different. So again, there is a certain profile that they're looking at that they're going to either look to maximize or it can come from superstardom if that becomes available. You think Alvey will hit 11 home runs again? Eric Chavez is not in that dugout, so I don't think so.
No,
and to be honest, with that certain power that he does have, Francisco Alvarez, with a certain hitting profile that this guy has, you could get 40 from him. Will it happen? I don't know. But you could get 40 from him. You could.
I mean, in a short time in 2023, what he hit almost 30, like 25 home runs around there, 26, 27. Yeah. So, and you actually give him a guy in Troy Snitker and Jeff Albert, who, again, their philosophy is pulling the ball and hitting the ball in the air. Well, with Francisco Alvarez's raw power, which is why the Mets signed him in the first place, you're going to get a monster power hitter out of Francisco Alvarez.
I wonder why he has 22 home runs. I wonder why he has 22 home runs over the last 2 seasons after that 25 home run season. I wonder why. I mean, listen, and we're not saying that everybody needs to pull every pitch, because again, you're seeing these percentages. They're 19%, 20%. It's all really about where the pitch is located, and that has to do with pitch recognition, pitch selection, swing decisions. However, there's a certain profile of, 3 times out of 10 that, the old-fashioned baseball people will say 3 times out of 10 is a great hitter. Well, a guy who pulls the fly ball 3 times out of 10, usually he gets a decent amount of results. It all goes by the same scale here. And even though, some people will get scared by analytics, boo, whoo, scary, it all goes on the same scale here of what's efficient and what isn't. And these days, with the type of pitching that you face, you can't just be slap hitting. You can't do it. Especially when you have the power, use it. I mean, and that's hopefully what they're going to try to. Yeah. That's the message that they're probably going to try and send. If they don't, we'll hold them accountable. But if they don't, if they do, at the direction that we are expecting, I'm excited. I am definitely excited.
Look, like we always talk about it, and like we always bring it up, like on our separate podcasts, like hitting, like there is a time and place for like for a differential in how you hit, like. Again, like if you're given a fastball down the middle, or if you're given a fastball up and in, pull the damn ball. But if you're given a changeup or a curveball to the outside corner, take the ball to the opposite field because that's where you're going to do the most damage with it. Like, it's not a hard concept to understand. Like, when you're given a certain pitch, pull it. But when you're given another pitch, put it to the opposite field. Like, it's not that hard of a concept to understand, but it's attacking and doing something that's going to get you the best results. That's basically all we want out of these hitters, and that's all we want out of our hitting philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, listen, from the pull fly ball aspects, Vientos as well. We know he's got an insane amount of power. Again, we know that he has had success to all fields because he does have that certain raw power. This is more of just the guys like Simeon or guys like Polanco. Again, when it comes to Mark Vientos, he has a little bit more of this power that, again, he has great opposite field power. He has a lot of raw power. More with him is about making more contact. That's basically it. But when he does end up giving contact, a majority of his success is from pulling fly balls as well. And the majority of his power is generated from pulling fly balls as well. So again, it's all about the philosophy that is being installed. It's all about the message that's being sent. And when the message is not inconsistent, then you have a more fluent and more efficient offense. That's what they're trying to do. Not to mention you also have more guys who are major league hitters, have that experience. And that's why I'm more confident about this offense now with those guys gone.
Yep, 100%.
And it's, again, and not everything is going to work. Not everything is going to be 100%. We're not speaking in absolutes here. However, efficiency does not mean perfection. And the Mets have not been efficient. They just have not been an efficient baseball team. And they need to find that certain efficiency, whether it is with the homegrown sweethearts or not. I mean, that's basically it. They needed to go a different direction. And hopefully the direction that they are going right now, hopefully they come out victorious in it. I hope they do. It would be awesome.
Yeah, we'll see. We will definitely see.
But just so you know, there is a plan in how they are approaching these hitters. It's not just, well, who has the best stats? Who has the best this, have the best that? It's something that they like. And it seems like pull air legends is what they like. I mentioned it earlier. They got 26 home runs out of Vientos and Alvey combined. That has to improve. It does have to improve. And I do think that it will with this philosophy. If it doesn't, then you're going to probably have to talk about, the players. It's all really just about what's the common denominator with all these players. That's basically it. And it's all really just about that certain consistency. I want to be in a point where I can just say, well, on a typical day, they're doing this certain philosophy and it's not inconsistent. I don't want to be in that situation, the Mets of old, where somebody homers, somebody homers twice in a game and it's replayed 100,000 times in a week. Like, I want it to be a consistent thing, thing where we're seeing somebody pop off one day or another, one day or another, because they have a consistent message being sent to them. And this is just on the hitting side. Pitching is a whole other discussion, but it's about this team being efficient. That's what it's about. Not about being perfect. It's about this team being efficient, and they're finally looking in the direction of modern day efficiency for this team after Stearns gave you 2 years. They gave you 2 years to figure it out. Gave you 2 years, gave Eric Chavez 2 years. Now we're going in a different direction.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, that's the thing. It's like, and this goes through always, like when we talk about in hockey, but when we talk about in baseball, like, I know we kind of come off and we kind of sound like we're expecting perfection, but listen, in reality, you're never going to get perfection in sports. Like, at the end of the day, like, these are human beings. Like, people are going to make mistakes, but it's all about, and this applies to the better teams, like what we talk about, that with like the Dodgers, the Braves, the Phillies, the Blue Jays. The reason why they're good is because they're consistent, and not also are they consistent, but it's all about reliability. Because you can win certain ways, but it doesn't mean that way you're winning is going to be reliable. Because again, we've seen the Mets throughout the last couple of years. They've had runs where the offense is not going great, but their pitching is bailing them out. And again, like we stated, like, yeah, cool that they're winning this way, but it's not sustainable. It's gonna catch up to you eventually. And look what happened. It caught up to them, and it caught up to them in dramatic fashion, and they ended up missing the playoffs last year. But if you're building the offense this way, and like we said before, you're bringing in these more toolsy players, and you're bringing in these players that fit more the philosophy that David Stearns is going to bring in, now you're going to see more of a sustainable way that the Mets are going to play. And not only that, they're going to play in a more sustainable way, but they're going to win at a sustainable way. And again, that's the key to being a good team. That's the key to being a World Series. It's all about repetition. If you can, be repetitive at the way you win, you're going to be a good team. Like it's a simple concept.
Yeah. It's just one of those tweaks that needs to be made for modern day baseball because it is the most efficient way. And either way with that, again, when you talk about, these certain hitters, it's also about the young guys too. Like if you bring in that consistent message to the young guys, who knows what they could accomplish as well as part of pieces from your farm system as well. And you can continue that pipeline of consistency. That's what they need. That's what they need. Because I'm tired of making the playoffs one year, gassing out at the end, and then the next year they stink. Like I'm tired of it. I am done with it. I have had enough of it. Let's build an actual infrastructure, an actual message that is sent. Let's create hitters. Let's do that. Maybe some guy that we pick up on the waiver wire. Maybe he has a little bit of a hot stretch. Maybe we get a DJ Stewart type of run or something. We've seen the Braves do that a lot with a lot of these guys. They have ridiculous runs. It's all about being flexible and also noticing details. Being like, okay, maybe this won't work. Maybe this won't work the next time. We can't rely on this.
And we always bring it up, especially on our podcast, but do Mets fans need to remember who was the guy that killed them in the 2024 NLCS? A guy by the name of Tommy Edman? Does anybody remember when the Dodgers picked up Tommy Edman? I don't think anyone was too afraid when the Dodgers picked him up, but what happened? They made the adjustments. They got him in their hitting lab, and he turned into a fucking monster in the playoffs. And he single-handedly was one of the reasons why the Mets got eliminated in that NLCS. It's all about.
It wasn't Ohtani. It wasn't Freeman. It wasn't Betts. Like it wasn't that. It was Tommy frickin' Edman. You gotta have a good message. You gotta have a good message that is sent, and that creates a lot deeper of a hitter, the more consistent. The philosophy needs to be taught, and it's not just the fact of, this all just needs to be better. We need better stats. We need better players. It's the fact that the message needs to be sent. You can find talent almost anywhere as long as the message is good within the organization, and hopefully that is what translates. I'm hoping. I don't know if it's going to end up happening, but I think that they are in a better direction as compared to what they were with the old coaching staff, not to mention the old core that I feel like also got complacent in that way. So I am all for what they are doing, and I am extremely excited to see what they're going to be able to do. And I know a lot of people, will, be a little bit judgmental in this way, and they pull back a little bit because on paper this team doesn't look better than it did in technical terms, but there's certain details that I feel like we're all missing out that I feel like are going to be for the better for this team, and I am excited. I am, if it goes in the direction that I hope it goes, but we all have to see it first, and that's why I'm definitely putting it in the hands of what David Stearns is doing as of right now, because I understand the thought process. I'm not someone who is agreeing with all of it, but I understand the thought process that they're going through and what they think so. And maybe, just maybe, they know more baseball than me. And that's what I hope. I hope that they prove me wrong. I hope. Daniel Cap saying, really, Carson, Raiders fan, you have to put Tuck on the screen. Come on. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, one of the biggest robberies in the history of sports, the Tuck rule, Raiders Patriots in 2001. But no, we actually put Tuck Watch as a play on something that the Rangers do a lot. That is Puck Watch. So it was Braden Schneider and co. That was the thought. And also, I didn't want to make it Tucker Watch because I feel like that was a little bit too many syllables. We'll see. Yeah. Just imagine pitching coach that could finally correct the walks. That's excruciating. That'd be great too. That'd be awesome. That would be awesome. And we do have a new pitching coach, so maybe there's a new message. And from what we have seen, all I say is just do your research. That's all I suggest to Mets fans. Just do research. See what it is before you just completely blow up. And I know that's hard for a lot of Mets fans. I know it is. Just do research. Do your research. See what you know. And from what we saw from Justin Willard, the pitching coach, he preaches a lot of command and utilizing of pitches and pitch sequencing. So, it's all about putting those tools together. But when a message is being sent, most of the time, 3 times out of 10, it works and it shows. It's all about finding the common denominator and what works and what doesn't. And hopefully the Mets are going in the direction of what works. Because again, like I said, I'm tired of this one-off year, one-on year. Let's build a sustainable winner. Let's be in the playoffs every single year, like the Brewers were under Stearns, even though nobody wants to hear that. It's all about using the resources, using the brain of Stearns, using the brain of everybody in that organization, and that's how they become like the Dodgers. Not just buying everything that breathes. It's not how that works. Not. That's personally gets you farther away from the Dodgers. And maybe some people will disagree, and they'll say, hey, I got to see it first, which you have every right to. But, again, this is the direction that they are going, and I will sit here and try to explain it the best way. And if they do something that I don't understand, like signing a guy like Luis Ariz, that's going to go into a certain point where I'm like, okay, what the fuck are we doing here? But they haven't done it yet. And it doesn't seem like they're in on Luis Ariz. So we're good. They haven't done anything remarkably stupid. Like franchise-altering stupid. They haven't done a JT Miller trade. They haven't extended a goaltender. They haven't done that yet. So I am hopeful. And yes, I know people will bring up Frankie Montas. Yes, stupid signing, definitely. But is it hog tie? Is it tying us to the train tracks as of right now? No, because it was a 2-year deal. 2-year deal. And yes, they are paying $17 million to him this offseason, but that's $17 million. Is that stopping them from offering $50 million a year to Kyle Tucker? No, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing we were talking about, let's say, for example, in the scenario where the Mets don't land Kyle Tucker, it's like you said, Carson, we don't see them in a world where they're going to automatically pivot to Cody Bellinger, because why would they? Now, yeah, sure, like, does Cody Bellinger fit in terms of defensively, and does he fit with the bat? Sure, but contract-wise, doesn't fit at all into what this team is trying to do in terms of how they're building out their roster and in terms of how they're trying to make this thing more sustainable throughout the next couple of years. Because again, like, and it's like you guys said on your podcast, why would you trade Brandon Nimmo with 5 years left on his contract to then just re-up and sign Cody Bellinger for a 7-year deal, which I don't think he's going to get 7 years to begin with. That's just more Scott Boras being high on crack, because I think the Yankees offered him a more fair enough deal with the 5 for 130 or the 5 for 150, 30 million AAV. And, if that's the case, I just don't see the Mets going anywhere near that. And I fully agree, because there was concerns with Cody Bellinger's game long term, and like you said, with the whole panic thing and just trying to buy players, that's how you end up like what we saw with Marte's bad deal, and then that's what we saw with Scherzer and Verlander's deal. I mean, again, like another one, and this was a pitcher that that at least Mets fans wanted them to sign in 23 after Jacob deGrom left to sign with the Rangers. Does anyone remember Aaron Nola's 6-year deal? Because 2 years into that contract, it's not looking like a pretty deal. And that's certainly a deal that it's looking like, okay, maybe is it fully hog-tying the Phillies and making more deals? I don't think it's necessarily fully hog-tying, but they definitely have some constraints because they are already tied up to Aaron Nola. And, they can't go out and replace a guy like Zach Wheeler, who's going to miss all of this year, because, again, they have that huge contract tied down to Aaron Nola. It's about being smart and offering the right guys the right contracts.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. It's again, everyone thinks that they can run the team better. However, there's a lot of different things that you need to take into account. David Stearns was on talking about the anger from Mets fans. I think he told the Post this yesterday. This just came out, and I can read it for everyone. David Stearns and the anger from Mets fans. I certainly understand that there have been points this offseason that have been frustrating for our fan base. We are not blind to that at all. I'm certainly not blind to that. I hear it, I recognize it, and from my friends and family at times, I'm also very convicted that what we are doing is the right thing for our franchise going forward to accomplish our goals. That's what David Stearns said to the Post, I think. He talked to, this was to Mark W. Sanchez. So he's from the New York Post, who also was reporting about the Tucker deal as well, which I didn't even mention. You don't just confidently say things like that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't just confidently say that without an actual plan. And people will judge all they want, but I want to see the plan unfold, because what the Mets have been doing in the past, even before Stearns was here, was not working. It was not working.
Nope.
So let's try another direction. And if you don't trust Stearns because of Frankie Montas, too bad. He's still going to be in your front office. So I think everybody trusted him after that NLCS run, right? Everyone liked him. It was like, oh, well, maybe. Oh, now he sucks. We missed the playoffs. Now, oh, he's good. Let's have a year where it's great, and then the next year also is great too. How about that? Let's continue. Let's do some sustainable success. Who has done that in their career? Not the Mets. David Stearns has. So let's see what the guy has to offer. How about that? Like we said on our show many times, we have to accept that our old ways suck, because they do. Proof's in the pudding. They're not consistent winners. They're just not. It's true.
Listen, I've always said, I know you share that same sentiment. Evans shares that same sentiment. I'd rather fail while trying something different than failing when I know I'm going to do the same thing over and over again that has shown time after time that has caused you to fail. Because what's one of our criticisms with the Rangers? They didn't win while locking up Hank to a long-term deal. So why? And then they go out and they sign fucking Igor Shesterkin to that huge contract. Why do that when you already know it doesn't work? Doesn't make any sense. And listen, just because you go in another direction, it doesn't mean that necessarily will work either. But I can at least appreciate that you're trying something new instead of just relying on something that doesn't work.
And if it doesn't work, if it doesn't work, you pivot somewhere else and you have flexibility to do it, because it's a 3-year deal for Tucker. You know what I mean? Like, that's why we do the short-term deals. So we have flexibility to move around if it doesn't work. That's why we do it. That's exactly why.
Yep.
And obviously there's top 1% arguments, guys like Lindor, guys like Soto. But if you can get Kyle Tucker, who is also a really good player, consistent 4 to 5 win player throughout his entire career, and you can get him on a short-term deal, you're going to jump at that, because we know that they have the financial flexibility. But using the financial flexibility on really, really good players, not guys like, Cody Bellinger, who's good. He's a good player. He can help you. But as he continues to age, you won't get that certain player that you paid for. We saw it firsthand with Starling Marte with a 4-year deal. Kyle Tucker at 29, you get 3 years out of him. It's the prime of his career. That's the prime of his career right there. And it puts you in the best position to win. And stay flexible too. Stay flexible. Without the Nimmo deal down your neck. Without, all these other contracts. You obviously will have money tied in with Soto and Lindor for years to come. But again, it's It's all about putting together all of these resources, all of them together. And it's not built in a day. It's not. You can't do it. Not possible. Can't just say, well, we have this now, officially. And I know a lot of people won't hear this. The Dodgers were sold in 2012. That was a long time ago, 14 years. Took a while. It took a while. Especially when you have 60 plus years of stench to clean out. It's not going to happen overnight. It just won't.
And Andrew Friedman was hired in 2014. Where was he hired from? The Tampa Bay Rays.
Who will never win anything and are a low rank. We look down on them because they have no money. I mean, I don't know. We can sit here until we're blue in the face to say that David Stearns is the right guy for the job, and he's done it before. He's proven it before, but only time will tell. People need results. I get it, but I will sit here to explain as to why. Even if I don't agree with it, so myself. That's the thing. If everybody thinks I'm 100% on board with Marcus Semien, he was my first choice. No. However, under research, under details, like that's there's things there that they like, and I understand that.
Yep.
And I hope that it's not seen as, we have just a chip on our shoulder. But what can you say?
Yep.
Joshua saying, and I think this is in terms of Semien, saying, I expect a rebound in his bat, nothing insane, but enough to be supportive. And that's all they need. That's all they need. That's really all they need from Marcus Semien. Let's say, can Marcus Semien, I think I said this on Twitter, actually, yesterday. If Marcus Semien can pretty much match what Jeff McNeil did offensively, he's already providing more than Jeff McNeil because of the defense, the base running, the overall contact rates, the quality of contact. Let's just say if he gives you a 111 weighted runs created plus, you're taking that. You're taking that with plus defense. That's a more all-around player. That's what the Mets have looked for. I don't think it's really, really bad, or I don't think it's really hard to believe that Semien can't give you a 730 OPS.
Yeah, that's one of the things we were talking about, like on our podcast. Like, okay, you acquire a guy like Marcus Semien, and listen, and I'm not expecting him to ever go back to what he was in 2021.
It's because it was the first of the series of culture-changing moves for this team. They weren't
always
done.
The first. No, but it's like I said, like I never expected Semien to go back to what he was in 2021, where he was putting up MVP level numbers with the Toronto Blue Jays. But if you're getting an above league average bat out of Marcus Semien, like a 750 OPS, 20 home runs, 250 batting average, a decent on-base percentage, that combined with his leadership ability, because there were also videos that he's already, I think, down in Florida, working with some of the Mets minor leaguers and some of the Mets younger infielders. So right there, boom, that's leadership. Would we have seen any of the other guys, from the old Mets core do that? Listen, maybe they did, but Marcus Semien, he's already gone down there a couple weeks ahead of spring training. He's like, listen, I'm already going to get to work. Again, that's a guy that's a leader. That's a guy that's won. And then, like I said, you compare that, and then you combine that with his great fielding, his good speed, the fact that, he's a winner. He's shown in the past that he could put up MVP-type numbers. Like I said, I don't need Semien to be MVP level. Would I love him to be MVP level? 100%, absolutely, because that makes this lineup that much better. But like I said, it's all about just surrounding the superstar players that we have with this good depth. And if Semien could be that league average bat that we're all hoping him to be, and he could be just a bit better than what Jeff McNeil was, like I said, added with that better defensive ability, then right away you have a very good guy that could easily slot into like your number 6 spot in the batting lineup. And I think everybody would be happy if at the end of the next season we look at Marcus Semien as a number 6 guy, and he gave this team 20 home runs with a 750 OPS. I don't think anyone would bat an eye about that. Everyone would take that right now if I said that Marcus Semien would have that type of production.
And he does have more power than Jeff McNeil, so he could give you more from that as well. Like, there is still a little bit more upside in the bat. And listen, he's getting older. We know that he is, but it's all really just about putting him in the right position. Like, beforehand, he might be at this point batting second in the lineup. That's not good enough. We know it's not good enough at this point in his career. Same thing when we were talking about like Starling Marte he shouldn't have been batting second. There's no reason they should have been batting second. But it's about like putting him in this certain position. Let's say if Semien is batting 7th for you, right? Batting 7th. Okay, let's do a little bit of a comparison here. The guy who batted 7th the most for the Mets last year, that would be probably
Beatty, maybe?
Probably Beatty, right?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the younger guys.
Beatty, right? And he was giving you, the best year of his career, obviously. If you could get from the 7th spot, right? From the 7th spot, from Marcus Semien, if you could get, let's say, a 111 weighted runs created plus that Beatty gave you. But guess what? You also have Brett Beatty, too. And listen, I'm not the biggest on Brett Beatty. We've said this constantly. But again, it's about deepening this lineup. Would you rather have let's say you have one 120 bat, or would you rather have two 115s? About the depth. It is about the depth. And I can give you so many examples of this happening. Even with the Dodgers, did we see who was their hero in the World Series? It wasn't Shohei. It was Andy Pages with an amazing catch and Miguel Rojas. That's what you need. You need those veteran pieces. That's what you need.
Yeah.
Not just like, well, we have 4 stars and that's it. The prospects will do the rest. You need a structure. You need a team. You need 26 guys who are willing to do everything for you. Who are willing to put their body on the line. They were playing like crap too, but they did what they had to do at one specific time. Yeah. But it just didn't seem like enough. Did it ever seem like enough? No, didn't. It's all about finding a consistent balance. That's what we want. And consistently, this team was inconsistent last year. So good job to them. They found consistency, but in the wrong way. That's what we need. That's exactly what we need. I don't know if there's any other updates on Tucker since we just went live.
I've been scrolling.
Nothing.
I haven't seen anything.
There's been nothing as of recent, so where we stand.
We'll probably get off and then he'll sign.
He'll probably sign or whatever. But, it all depends on if we get a story tomorrow of any significance. Maybe we'll go live, maybe we won't. We'll see. But other than that, I think we're going to stay on for about 5 more minutes. And here's some of the latest here that we saw. Jesse Rogers of ESPN said the Blue Jays have made a long-term offer to Kyle Tucker. So here's the latest here. There we go. So this is the outfielder Kyle Tucker, the top player available in the free agent market this offseason, has been offered a short-term deal by the New York Mets that is believed to be worth $50 million per season. Sources told ESPN's Jesse Rogers on Tuesday. Tucker, who turns 29 on Saturday, continues to field offers after he declined a $22 million plus qualifying offer by the Chicago Cubs. Following this season, sources tell ESPN that the Toronto Blue Jays have made a long-term offer to Tucker, who is one of the best left-handed hitters in the league. So, again, that long-term deal, it seems like he's trying to be met on in the middle. Maybe he's looking for $40 million a year for 5 years. Maybe he's looking for that, and the Jays are offering what, like $35 million? Like, maybe that's what he's looking for. I don't know. I think it's more of just trying to meet in the middle here, and we'll see. Because at this point, if we're talking about a long-term offer from the Blue Jays, he would have took it by now. Yeah, he would have took it. I feel like he would have. But we are expecting a decision in the next week, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like, if it's a thing just based off AAVs, because I'm not sure what the exact, like, again, we didn't get an exact number on how many years the Blue Jays offered. Like, they may have offered 6, and maybe Tucker wants like 8. But obviously, we don't know the exact numbers on that. But if it is AAV wise, because we have kind of heard also, like, because Ken Rosenthal, when I believe it was yesterday, that he said, the Blue Jays aren't as desperate as maybe what they would have been at the start of the offseason, because they already did agree to a guy on a contract like Okamoto, who could also play some outfield. Obviously, you could play some infield defense. So, I mean, let's see. Maybe the Blue Jays aren't just going to throw exactly whatever it takes to get Kyle Tucker. I mean, I know before the offseason started, I thought that Tucker was going to sign with the Blue Jays, but different signings. Also, the fact that they've already signed the guy to a qualifying offer with Dylan Cease. Maybe that changes their aggressiveness on how far they're willing to go for Tucker. Ultimately, though, like what you were saying, Carson, like, if the Blue Jays were offering like 8 years per se, 7 years, I think Tucker would have already taken it. So I think maybe for me right now, I think it's just between Mets Dodgers. And I think obviously, and the Blue Jays could come in and offer him like a $45 million AAV for 8 years, and that gets the deal done. But right now, I would say personally, I think it's mainly between Mets Dodgers, and it's whoever structures that short-term deal better. Obviously, we'll see what happens with opt-outs, deferred money. We'll obviously see what happens, but I'm hoping that he could sign this week, because I want to get Tucker off the board, just so we can kind of have that final perspective on how we think the Mets are going to finish this offseason. Because obviously, if they sign Tucker, we know that they're just going to fill out the margins for the rest of the offseason. But if they don't land Kyle Tucker, obviously there is other big moves that the Mets will have to make to fill out those roster spots. Because right now, even on their 50-man, they have 38 out of 40, or on their 40-man, they have 38 out of 48 spots. So they're going to make additions. It's just who they go after to make those additions.
I think that it's probably the pivot, if I were to guess. If I were to pivot, if they sign Tucker, I think that they are trading for a starting pitcher.
Yeah.
I think that that's what they're going to do. If they don't, I think that maybe Framer Valdez comes back on the table if they don't sign Kyle Tucker. And then that includes like trading for a center fielder. Like that's where I think it goes. Would I guarantee that they are going to sign Valdez or Tucker? I can't tell. I think that they are going to trade for a bat and sign a pitcher, or they're going to sign a bat and trade for a pitcher. So there still is other things that they need to, pivot to. And there's not really that much time left in this offseason. That's the funny part. So it's going to go quickly. I'm excited to see what happens here. Maybe the next 48 hours, we know where Kyle Tucker goes. Either way, we're going to hop off here. We've been live for 2 hours, just yapping constantly. Thank you to Matt, Evan for a little bit, but he had to step out. But either way, their links are in the description, so make sure to go follow them. They do their show, Mets Central. And, of course, with our show regularly Friday at 7:30 p.m. throughout the entire offseason. Thank you guys so much for watching. For those of you who tuned in, we hope that you enjoyed the conversation. For those of you listening or watching on playback, if you want to join the conversation in the future, turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok. Follow all of us individually. Links are in the description. And finally, let's go Mets. Boy, I hope we get to Kyle Tucker. But either way, we'll see you guys next time.